today. I'm a UX researcher, and today makes it actually 7 years since I started doing UX research. I was only supposed to be the panel, but then last minute changes, and I'm going to be talking about multiple insight sources for making product decisions around the collaboration in general. So, but before I go on, I want to get a sense of like what people are in the room. If you're a product manager, product designer, UX designer, UX writer, content, if your hand hasn't gone up, what do you do?
Service design.
Sorry?
Service design.
Service design. Any other UX architect? Well, do you have any engineers? Data analysts? Okay, cool. All right, awesome. So we're starting with puzzles, right? Everything is a puzzle. Everything is incomplete. Everybody has an incomplete picture of everything. Are you familiar with the parable story of the 6 blind men, or is it 7 blind men, and the elephant? Anybody familiar with that story? Okay, so the story goes that there's 6 or 7 blind men, and there's an elephant, and all of them have are touching different parts of the elephant, and they're all trying to describe the elephant to each other. And someone says, oh, it's like a tree because like they're touching the legs, and someone goes, it's like something else because they're touching the tail, and someone has like another perspective because they're touching a different part of the elephant. And so if they go by only the part that they have felt and seen in both, then they have an incomplete picture of the elephant. And so the idea here is that everything is a puzzle, and everyone has different pieces of that puzzle. And when you come together and plug in those pieces together, then you have the full picture. So, why do you need to do this in a product context, like startup business context? You need to do this because you want to be sure that you're solving the right problem. If everyone has a different perspective of the problem that you're solving, then you're all solving different problems, really. And then that's where the conflicts happen and the, no, it's this and no, it's that. But when you come together to collaborate and you have the same point of view, then you're sure that you're solving the right problems, and then you can make better decisions. And then, because you have the same point of view, you have the same perspective, you're reducing the assumption that the other person has and the other person has, and everyone is starting kind of on the same point of view. And the other thing that this does is that it makes sure that everyone is aligned. So even if you have differences in your point of view, because you have come together, there's a sense of alignment, like, okay, these are the things we agree on, and these are the things that we disagree on, and this is how we're going to move forward with that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about insight sources, and in the previous talk, I talked about like how you don't always have to do research, and yes, I am a researcher, and I said you don't always have to do research, and I will go into some there's a metrics for it once you decide whether you should do research or not. But before we go there, some of the places where you can get insights, you have your internal teams, and most of the time in the product context, we only think about product, the product manager, the UX designer or researcher, and maybe even the devs. But there's a wider spec of people that you can get insights from. So you have customer support, you have sales, UX, engineering, marketing. Basically anyone who talks to customers in some way, and there's also data analysts, data scientists. There's like different structures, different companies will have different structures, but the idea is that everyone in some way, anyone who is customer facing in some way or gets some kind of insights is a source of user feedback, user insights, whatever you want to call it. And if you're only looking at one source, you're missing some part of the picture. In my organization, for example, there's a customer support team, there's a customer success team, there's a customer onboarding team. So that's 3 different teams who are in contact with the customers. There's also the sales team and a bunch of other teams that are also customer facing. So if you're only focused within your product trial, you're missing out on insights from all these other places who are also in contact with the customer. So another way we talked about already is using analytic tools. And it depends, like on again the structure of the organization. In some places, the product manager will be doing that. In some places, there's a dedicated data analyst. In some places, the UX folks are also looking into that as well. And then you also have another insight source is research, of course. And research, there are different kinds of research. There's customer research, UX research, market research, desk research. All of this falls under research. And as I continue to do research more and more, I'm seeing that like my research is expanding beyond UX research or what people consider UX research. I'm also doing market research. I'm looking at market trends and industry analysis and industry trends and all of these things. And all of those things go in together to create a picture of what research is and how research can support the product development process. And finally, another source is experiments, which is when you have an idea, you have something, and you don't want to go into doing like research from scratch. You have some insights already, you have some assumptions that are not so risky like they talked about previously, and you can move forward with what you already know, or the assumptions that you're making are not very risky assumptions. So for example, you want to decide whether to dedicate time to build a web app or a mobile app. That's a big, pretty much like committed thing you're committed to, and it's not easily undoable. You need to be very sure like about the insight that you're going to use to make that decision versus if like the example they gave, like you just want to put a button somewhere. You can just put it somewhere and see what happens, and then if it doesn't work, you change it and try again, try something else. Okay. So now let's zoom into product and UX. Talked about like the wider organization and all the other places you can get insights from. But zooming into product and UX, the key thing is to start early. So there's this experience that a lot of people, if you're a UX person, you probably had the experience where the product manager or other people decide like this is what we're gonna do, and then they come and tell you that, oh, I need to design screens for this, or make it pretty, or I did this prototype, make it nicer, those kinds of things. So it's very important to include UX early, especially in, back to the previous slides I was talking about, like the different places, and looking back at that flow that they showed earlier, where you see like the problem discovery, problems, all those things. Depending on where you are, who you collaborate with may change, or who is more involved. There'll be different levels of involvement. So in the very beginning stages, when you're still doing problem discovery, problem understanding, that's where you're getting a lot of like customer support, customer success, sales, all these other customer-facing teams. And as you go further down the line, like when you go into like pre-launch, post-launch, you're involving more with like marketing, with sales, for example. And so here is also when you're in that problem selection, problem discovery phase, is where the UX product collaboration ideally should start. And another thing to consider is most of the time, we're not actually building new things, like a new feature that has never existed in the platform. You're mostly like iterating, improving the existing things. Occasionally, there's times where you're building an entirely new thing, or you're designing a whole system, and you need to do like a lot of foundational groundwork. But a lot of the time, the work that we do is actually improving what already exists and making it better for the customer. And when you're doing that, you need to know like what exactly you're trying to improve, and the UX folks can help there. And so when you have them early from like in the initial stages, when you get to that point where you want to design a solution, with the example, they already gave a very beautiful example, so I'm not going to go like too into this, is like just making sure that you're getting the insights that you need at that beginning phase, and making sure that the UX folks also know what exactly the thing that you're trying to achieve is. And that happens collaboratively, because the more you have that connection, the more invested everyone is in that process, and it's easier to move forward there. So this is how I think about the kinds of ways that product and UX collaborate, or even on the wider frame, is either project collaboration or continuous collaboration. Project collaboration is you have this specific project that you're working on, like the previous example, where you want to do a redesign, or you want to build a new feature, or you want to maybe even look for like a new business opportunity, a new solution. That's like very specific to a specific project, and the things that you talk about really summarize what that process will look like, where you're defining, you're refining, and then you build. And then continuous collaboration is where the magic really happens, because even outside of the projects that you're working on, how do you find those little moments where you can add value to the customers, the business. It's from that continuous collaboration where, for example, where I work now, I have a weekly call with every single product manager that we have. I also have a weekly with, a bi-weekly, fortnightly, bi-weekly is every 2 weeks, so twice a week. Fortnightly calls with customer success, customer support. And in addition to that, I also join like the grooming sessions that the PMs have with the engineers once in a while to see like any things that we can contribute to the UX team actually. And then we have the product and UX team calls. It's a lot of calls, but you just have to find the cadence that works for you. Some product managers I don't have that as much face time with as with other product managers because I work more with some product managers than others just because the products are bigger in terms of like scale and size. And so it's just finding the cadence that works and what makes sense. Previously, I used to do the fortnightly calls and then we realized that there was always more to talk about, so it became weekly. And there's some people that I have monthly calls with. So it's in that continuous collaboration place where you're constantly sharing insights, sharing feedback, sharing ideas that the magic really happens. And that often leads to the project collaboration type of thing. And it's kind of like a loop because in the project collaboration, you also have continuous collaboration as well. So deciding how to engage, particularly with research. I am a researcher after all. And so this is a framework by Jeanette Fuchella. I'm pretty sure that I didn't pronounce that correctly. But it's really thinking about when should you do research, when should you ship it, when should you do a lot more like UX and design stuff. And as you can see, when you have low problem clarity, you don't really know what you're trying to solve. Again, looking back to that chart, like in the very beginning phases where we don't really know what the situation is, we don't know what the problems are. An example of this from a couple of years back, I worked on Google Chrome, and it was focused on sub-Saharan Africa, and it's like, what do we even do? There's so much we could do to improve this app. Where do we start from? And it started with a lot of research, like we did a lot of, I started doing desk research, just like what was happening, did some informal interviews, went to do a lot of interviews, diary studies, like so much research in that beginning phase to like, what do we really focus on to improve this experience based on the needs of this specific market. And then if you have low risk as well, and there's low problem clarity, this is where you go back to like those insight sources I talked about. What research have you already done within the organization? What insights you have from your data analytic tools? What insights you have from customer support, from customer success, from all these other people that collect customer feedback? So that's a much like research light basically. And then when there's high risk, you need to do like a lot of in-depth research to be sure that you're solving the right problem or that you've even identified the right problem. There's also the idea of like one-way doors and two-way doors. I can't remember who came up with that. I've seen it somewhere. And the idea is that like, is it reversible? Can you walk back into that door? If you can't, then maybe you can just ship a measure or just do some redesign, create a prototype and design it and then build it. If it's a one-way door, then you want to spend more time in that bottom right quadrant. And ship and measure, an example from my research work is we recently redesigned our website, and the marketing team is kind of the product manager for the website, and we had some disagreements about like the copy on some parts of the website, like the nav bar and some things. And this is where the whole idea of disagree and commit comes in. As a researcher, what you do when you have this insight that says this thing doesn't work or won't work as well as this other thing, but then other people have different perspectives. So this is where disagree and commit comes from. It's like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to launch it with the way that you want it to be, and this is how we're going to measure it, and then we'll see how great or not great it goes. And so because of that, the example is for the websites, for the new websites, we have a learning management solution, and so the nav bar is supposed to have like view the library, view the platform, and all of these things. And so for the library, we call it the hospitality excellence. Internally, it's called hospitality excellence. And I was like, no, customers don't know what that is. They just know that they want a library. And it's like, no, but it's hospitality excellence. That's what we call it. And It's actually a term that is not uncommon in the hospitality industry. So it's like, okay, let's leave it as hospitality excellence and go. And so we launched the new website with hospitality excellence in Nap Bar. And when that was launched, we did some testing and we saw that people weren't finding that. And so we changed it. It was a very easy change, literally just go into Webflow and change the text. So that's why it was like, just ship it and let's see what happens. And then we can experiment, try different variations of the copy. It's not expensive, it's not taking too much time. Let's see and see. And obviously, when we changed it to course library, it became way better. So yeah, that's just like another example, and I think I went ahead because I was going to give the example here. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. The general idea is just to think about the capabilities of your team and what is easily reversible, what is not, and making sure that you're involving UX and product are collaborating pretty much from the beginning, so that like all the bases are covered. And of course, this also includes engineering at certain points, like with the example that they gave earlier of like, is this even something that we can build based on the architecture of the system? Like, I'm a UX researcher, like, I don't know anything about the architecture, and this is just a personal preference, which is not to say that the UX researchers that are like development business, but like, I personally don't know all of that stuff, and so I collaborate a lot with, I talk a lot with the engineers to understand like what is actually doable as well. Yeah. So that's it.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a question? Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Explained really well.
Yeah.
Very much.
Thanks a lot. And thank you for taking the stage last minute because of unfortunately Andrea couldn't make it today. But Lade, thank you a lot.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.